Here's a good question I got not too long ago. Somebody said, if people are like the weather, why should we be concerned if others think they're happy but they're not? This was based on where I had talked about people thinking they're happy but they're not. So the person said, what is that of any concern to me? Why should I even be observing that or thinking about that? And the person said, isn't our recovery dependent on our own belief in inherent worth? Why is other people's happiness or their incorrect perspective of their own happiness any of our concern? Now, here's the thing. It's true that people are the weather to us. And it's also true that worrying about how other people live their lives isn't constructive. So I don't look out at like my neighbor or my brother, my parents. I don't look at anybody and worry about how they're living their lives. I look at it non-judgmentally. Just like, well, that's the way they're living their life. Okay, I respect that. It's a total waste of energy and attention to be worrying about how other people are living their lives. But that's only true in the sense of involving ourselves with what is not ours to involve ourselves with. There are two ways to observe a thing. I don't know if you knew that or not, but there are two ways to observe a thing. One is judgmentally. Now, here's the interesting thing about people who observe judgmentally. Do you know why they observe judgmentally? They do so because it's a way to avoid looking inward. Think about that. Observing judgmentally, observing other people and their lives and their choices, judgmentally, is a way to avoid looking inward. That's why there's so many hypocrites, especially like religious folks. There's so tendency there to be so judgmental about how other people are living. Then it's no surprise, is it, when later it turns out that they're the dirty, cheating skunk, or they're the person who's cheating on their income tax, or they're the person who is molesting children, or they're the person who is doing whatever, who lied or stole or did whatever. Because people who observe judgmentally do this as a way to avoid looking inward, honestly, with the interest of correcting whatever's there. The second way to observe a thing is non-judgmentally. And this type of observing is to take what we see and what we observe and then take that and use it to look inward and understand ourselves as human beings better. So, the example I told was that in Arizona, when I went into my own intensive program, not my intensive program, but an intensive program there, they sent me out to this farm, and there were these other people there and horses, and they got us all out there with the horses, and they said, well, what we would like you to do is we would like you to round up these horses and get them into their stalls there. She says, what I want you to do is I want you all to work together to do this and get these horses into their stall. So I just sat back for a second. I just watched these other fellas. There's guys and girls both there, different ages, different culture, different races, different cultures. But I watched them working together to try to round up these horses. I had some experience growing up with horses, but I can't say that I was, I'm a horse whisperer or anything like that. But what I did was I just watched them. And after a while, it occurred to me, I started thinking, what they're doing by going up to the horses and stuff like this is just pushing them away. The horses just want to get away. And I thought to myself, but what would you do if you were going to feed these horses? They would probably know just by opening the gate that it was feeding time to these stalls. So I looked over, and sure enough, all the gates were closed. Mind you, I was not participating with the group of people, the other people who were there. I was just observing them and trying to figure out what they were doing wrong, why it wasn't working for them. So I went over, popped the latch off the gate, pulled the door, swung the door wide open, and would you believe that those horses dropped everything, every one of them, and come over and they corralled themselves in that stall. The therapist, the horse therapist, as she was called, was kind of gobsmacked. And she's just like, how did you know to do that? You must have grown up around horses. It wasn't that. I did grow up around horses, but even though I didn't know horses all that well. Now here's the thing about that. I was observing the other people, but was I observing them judgmentally? Was I standing there going, man, these bunch of idiots, look how stupid they are. Walk around doing this completely pointless exercise, and no, there was no judgment at all. I wasn't observing them to pass judgment on them. Instead, I was studying, observing, and learning. So getting healthy and staying healthy requires understanding not only yourself, but people in general. You know, if you and I were fish, well, then our lives would benefit from observing and understanding the nature of fish and fish psychology. But we ain't fish, we're people. So to understand the nature of people better, which is what we are, we're people. So understanding the nature of people and people psychology in general helps us understand ourselves better, to identify and correct things about ourselves that we recognize in other people, or to recognize and completely avoid aspects of behavior and thinking that we recognize in other people. So it's non-judgmental. As far as whether people are happy or they just think they're happy, not being a concern of yours, well, you're right that it's no concern of yours in the sense that you can't live their lives for them, and you shouldn't even be trying. But it is a concern of yours in that whatever unhealthy behaviors and thinking we observe in others is educational, and it gives us the opportunity to analyze ourselves, to identify and correct similar patterns with ourselves, or to avoid adopting those things altogether. Orange slices are brief highlights from the Last Symptom podcast. Subscribe to full audio episodes of the show on any major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, Amazon Music, and more. While I've got you chewing on that, like this video, pretty please. Might as well press subscribe while you're at it. I bet you a nickel you know somebody who's overdue for hearing some of these things, so go on, forward this video to them.